Iridian blood splattered the cold metal walls of the alien outpost as Marcus Howard crushed the throat of yet another alien invader, relishing the horror in its bulbous eyes as the life drained from its frail body. They had enslaved humanity for a century, and now the humans were back to butcher every last one of them. The Iridians invaded Earth 100 years ago. Humanity fought bravely, but was outmatched and outgunned. Forced to surrender or face extinction, the survivors were subjugated, shackled in chains, and dragged off to labor camps under the ruthless alien regime. Toiling in mines, factories, and fields, they endured unthinkable cruelty and hardship. Parents wept as Iridian masters ripped children from their arms. Dissent was punished by mutilation, torture, or public execution, as a warning against disobedience. Spirits broken, many humans embraced their new status as chattel. But some, like Marcus, never lost the burning desire for freedom, biding their time until the chance for retribution finally came. In the bowels of this remote outpost on the fringes of Iridian space, that time had arrived. Alarms blared as Marcus and his team raced through winding corridors. He led them to a fortified control room where the outpost's vile commander, Pixis, cowered behind a phalanx of armed guards. Bullets and plasma blasts flew in all directions amid the din of ricocheting rounds, sizzling flesh, and agonized screams. The stench of death and smoldering carbon fouled the recycled air. One by one, Marcus cut down the guards, never flinching, never stopping, until only Pixis remained. The once arrogant Iridian officer trembled, eyes wide with dread, as the vengeful human grabbed him by the neck and growled, "Open the data vault! Now!" With shaking appendages, Pixis complied. Marcus's fellow rebels plundered the outpost's computer banks, seizing intel on Iridian fleet movements, secret projects, and a heavily encrypted file believed to contain plans for a planet-killing superweapon. Having retrieved the precious data, the humans swiftly sabotaged the base's defenses and power systems before vanishing into the void of space. But the information they had stolen offered no comfort, only a grim revelation. The Iridians were preparing to amass an armada to eradicate the human resistance without mercy. Worse still, it seemed a network of human traitors had been aiding the enemy all along. The clock was now ticking for Marcus Howard and every free human in the galaxy. In a race against time and impossible odds, they would need to harness everything they had gleaned from the raids to decrypt the Iridian plans, root out the collaborators, and launch their own desperate counterstrike. The alternative was too horrific to contemplate: the extinction of humanity itself. The war had entered a lethal new phase, and the fate of their species hung in the balance. Back at the Resistance base, Marcus and his team pored over the trove of encrypted Iridian data they had stolen from the outpost. They worked around the clock, fueled by a potent cocktail of desperation, anger, and hope. Bloodshot eyes stared at glowing screens as fingers flew across keyboards, urgency driving them to push beyond exhaustion. After days of relentless effort, a breakthrough emerged from the digital labyrinth. The schematics for the rumored Iridian superweapon snapped into focus, and with them, a chilling revelation. The weapon harnessed the power of a rare, dangerously unstable element, one found in trace deposits on only a handful of planets scattered across the cosmos. To their surprise and alarm, Earth was one of them. In a dimly lit room, Marcus gathered the Resistance leaders. Grim faces stared back at him, etched with the weight of a century of oppression. "If the Iridians get their claws on this element," he said, jabbing a finger at the flickering projection of Earth, "it's game over. They'll have the firepower to vaporize entire worlds. We can't let that happen." A murmur of assent rippled through the room. They all knew what had to be done. "We need to secure those deposits before the squids do," Marcus continued. "It won't be easy. The sites will be heavily guarded." He paused, his voice hardening with tenacity. "But we've got no choice. We move fast, hit them hard, and get our hands on every last scrap of that element. Failure is not an option." Within hours, strike teams were mobilized, each tasked with raiding a key mining site. For the largest deposit, located in a remote and heavily fortified facility, Marcus took point himself. As they approached the target, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the cold focus that came with staring death in the face. They moved silently, neutralizing the perimeter security with ruthless efficiency. Sentries crumpled soundlessly, throats crushed or skulls shattered before they could raise the alarm. The resistance fighters slipped into the compound like vengeful shadows. But inside, the shadows stirred. A contingent of elite Iridian commandos, their chitinous armor glinting in the harsh light, surged from hidden positions. The air erupted with the snarl of plasma rifles and the zing of ricocheting slugs as the two forces clashed in a brutal point-blank firefight. Marcus ducked behind a crate, bullets pinging off the metal inches from his head. His team was outgunned and outmatched, the Iridians pressing their advantage. As he popped up to squeeze off a burst from his rifle, a plasma bolt seared past his cheek, close enough to blister the skin. And then, in the midst of the chaos, he saw him. Nolan, his old friend, his comrade in arms, a brother once, now fighting alongside the very monsters they had sworn to destroy. For a moment, their eyes met across the battlefield, and in that gaze, Marcus saw a flicker of hesitation, of doubt. It was all the opening he needed. Seizing the moment, Marcus rallied his team, his voice rising above the cacophony of battle. They surged forward, catching the Iridians off guard. The tide turned, and the resistance swept through the facility, securing the vital element reserves. As they set the charges to destroy the remaining deposits, denying the Iridians any chance to salvage them, Nolan confronted Marcus. His voice was raw with anguish as he pleaded for understanding. The Iridians had his family, he said. They had given him no choice. Marcus felt the weight of a century of suffering, of the sacrifices they had all made pressing down on him. He looked at Nolan, seeing the toll of the choices they had been forced to make etched in the lines of his face. But he also saw the faces of every man, woman, and child who looked to the resistance for hope, for a future free from the yoke of Iridian tyranny. In the end, there was only one choice he could make. With a heavy heart, he turned his back on his old friend, leaving him behind as the explosives ripped through the mine, burying the past in a cascade of rubble and dust. But even as they emerged from the facility, the precious element secure, Marcus knew their fight was a long way to go. The battle had only begun. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow as he stared at the flickering hologram of the Iridian superweapon schematics. The stolen data had proven a tough nut to crack, but they finally had a breakthrough. "Dr. Caldwell, talk to me," Marcus said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. The scientist's weary face appeared on a nearby screen. Dark circles ringed his eyes, a testament to weeks of relentless work. "We've done it, Marcus. The decryption algorithms finally bore fruit. We've got a partial schematic of their doomsday device." Marcus leaned in, studying the complex diagrams. "What are we looking at here, Doc?" "It's worse than we feared," Caldwell replied. "The weapon utilizes a controlled singularity, a miniature black hole, for lack of a better term. The destructive potential is unimaginable." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He'd seen Iridian weapons obliterate cities, but this could shatter worlds. "There's got to be a weakness, something we can exploit." Caldwell nodded. "There is. The singularity requires a constant stream of that unstable element we secured to maintain stability. Without it, the whole thing goes critical." Marcus's mind raced. "So if we cut off the supply—" "Boom," Caldwell finished. Marcus banged his hand on the console. "We've got to hit them before this thing goes operational. Gather the team." Hours later, Marcus stood before his elite squad. Talia, the Resistance's deadliest sniper, cleaned her rifle with practiced precision. Zach, their tech wizard, pored over schematics on a datapad. "Listen up," Marcus growled. "We're going after the big one. Iridian shipyards, heavily fortified orbital facility. Our target, their superweapon, still under construction. We get in, we sabotage it, we get out. Questions? Talia looked up from her weapon. Just one. When do we leave? The assault began under cover of darkness. Their stealth ship slipped past Iridian sensors, a ghost in the void. They breached the shipyard's outer defenses with surgical precision, disabling alarm systems and neutralizing patrols. As they moved deeper into the facility, Marcus felt a familiar tension coiling in his gut. Something wasn't right. The security was formidable, but not as robust as expected for a project of this magnitude. His suspicions were confirmed when they reached the central chamber. There, dominating the cavernous space, loomed the half-constructed superweapon, and standing before it, flanked by elite commandos, was a face Marcus had hoped never to see again. Pixis. The Iridian commander's eyes gleamed with malevolent anticipation. "Welcome, humans," he hissed. "I've been expecting you." All hell broke loose. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Marcus and his team dove for cover. Zack and his tech crew scrambled toward the weapons control systems, while Marcus and Talia provided covering fire. "Hurry!" Marcus shouted over the din of battle. "We don't have much time." Pixis charged through the chaos, his eyes locked on Marcus. The two collided in a fury of fists and rage, their long-standing rivalry erupting into vicious combat. Marcus barely registered Zack's triumphant shout as the engineer successfully uploaded Caldwell's virus. The shipyard trembled as alarms blared, warning of imminent reactor overload. Pixis snarled, realizing his impending defeat. With a desperate lunge, he reached for the weapon's fail-safe controls. Marcus intercepted, driving his elbow into the Iridian's throat. Pixis crumpled, gasping. "Time to go!" Talia yelled, laying down suppressing fire as the team retreated. They sprinted through disintegrating corridors, the station shuddering around them. They reached their ship just as the first explosions rocked the shipyard. As they blasted away from the doomed facility, a blinding flash lit up space behind them. The Iridian superweapon, along with their hopes of galactic domination, vanished in a cataclysmic fireball. On board the ship, battered and bloodied, the team allowed themselves a moment of victory. But the grim reality of their situation quickly reasserted itself. They had struck a devastating blow, but the war was far from finished. The Iridians would retaliate, and humanity would face its greatest test yet. Marcus stared out at the stars, his face set with iron willpower. The real battle was just beginning. The destruction of the Iridian superweapon was a turning point, igniting a spark of hope across the galaxy. Marcus paced the command center on Drexia, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Screens flickered with reports from a dozen worlds. He paused, studying the tactical display of Tixer 5. "We hit them here," he said, jabbing a finger at the map. "The labor complex is their biggest asset in the sector. We take it out, we cripple their operations and free thousands." Talia nodded, checking the action on her sniper rifle. "My team's ready. We'll provide overwatch while you breach the perimeter." They moved under cover of darkness, the Tixer 5 moons casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The labor complex loomed ahead, a sprawling maze of buildings surrounded by electrified fences. Marcus signaled to Zack, who produced a small device. With a few taps, the security grid flickered and died. They were in. Alarms blared as they stormed the facility. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Marcus dove behind a stack of crates, returning fire. "Push forward!" he shouted. "To the cell blocks!" They fought their way deeper, neutralizing guard posts and freeing prisoners as they went. Confused faces peered out from behind bars, hope dawning in their eyes for the first time in years. "We're with the Resistance," Marcus said, blasting open a cell door. "You're free. Take up arms if you can fight. Help us liberate this place." Word spread like wildfire. As more prisoners were freed, they joined the fray. Soon, the complex was in chaos. Iridian guards found themselves overwhelmed by the surging tide of angry humans. Marcus led the charge to the control center, where they secured the facility's communications array. He broadcast a message to every habitable world in range. "People of Earth, this is Marcus Howard. The resistance lives. We've struck a blow against our oppressors. Rise up. The time for freedom is now. Across the stars, humans answered the call. Mining colonies revolted. Shipyards ground to a halt as workers sabotaged Iridian vessels. Supply depots went up in flames. The Iridian Empire reeled, struggling to contain the spreading rebellion. But their response was swift and brutal. A massive armada assembled, intent on crushing the resistance once and for all. On Drexia, Marcus and his forces prepared for the coming storm. They fortified their positions, stockpiling weapons and converting every scrap of technology they could scrounge into makeshift defenses. As the Iridian fleet approached, tension mounted. Rebel ships took up defensive positions, ready to sell their lives dearly. Marcus stood on the command deck, watching the enemy armada fill the view screen. A scout's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, we've ID'd the Iridian flagship. It's Pixis. He's leading the assault himself." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Here was a chance, perhaps their only chance, to end this war. He turned to his team, grit etched on his face. "We board that ship," he said. "We capture Pixis. It's our best shot at forcing a ceasefire." They launched under the cover of the chaotic space battle, their stealth shuttle weaving between capital ships and streaking fighters. They latched onto the Iridian flagship's hull, cutting their way inside. Alarms blared as they fought through the corridors. Iridian crewmen fell before their advance. They reached the bridge, bursting through the doors in a hail of gunfire. Pixis stood at the helm, shouting orders to his officers. He whirled, eyes widening as he saw Marcus. "You!" the Iridian snarled. Marcus leveled his weapon. "It's over, Pixis. Order your fleet to stand down." A cruel smile twisted Pixis's features. "I think not, human. You may have me, but you've sealed your own doom." He tapped a control on his wrist. "This ship's reactor is set to overload. We all die together." Marcus cursed. "Zach, can you stop it?" The tech specialist was already at a console, fingers flying. "Working on it, but we don't have much time." They fought a desperate holding action as Pixis's loyalists tried to retake the bridge. Marcus confronted the Iridian commander, their old hatred boiling to the surface. "End this madness," Marcus shouted. "How many more have to die?" Pixis sneered. "As many as it takes to crush you vermin once and for all." The deck shuddered beneath their feet. Warning klaxons screamed. They were running out of time. "Got it!" Zach yelled triumphantly. The reactor warnings faded. Pixis sagged, defeated at last. Marcus grabbed him, activating the ship's communications. "Attention, Iridian forces," he broadcast. "Your commander is our prisoner. This war is over. Stand down and prepare to negotiate terms for peace." Confusion rippled through the Iridian fleet. Without leadership, their attack faltered. As the gravity of the situation sank in, weapons powered down. The long night of Iridian oppression was finally coming to an end. But Marcus knew the road ahead would not be easy. Peace talks. The acrid stench of ozone and scorched metal filled the air as Marcus strode into the makeshift conference room. His boots echoed on the cold floor, each step carrying the weight of a century of oppression and the fresh scars of recent battles. Across the table, the Iridian delegation sat in stony silence, their scaled faces unreadable. High Warlord Vizak, his eyes gleaming with barely concealed malice, spoke first. "You will return Pixis to us immediately and order your insurgents to lay down their arms. Those are our terms." Marcus leaned forward, his hands splayed on the table. "Not a chance. We've dealt your fleet a crippling blow. Pixis stays with us until we reach an agreement that ensures humanity's freedom." Vizak's lips curled into a sneer. "You overestimate your position, human. We still hold the advantage." He tapped a device on his wrist, and a hologram flickered to life between them. Marcus's blood ran cold as he recognized the schematics, the superweapon they'd worked so hard to destroy. "Impossible," he breathed. "Oh, it's quite possible," Vizak purred. "Our engineers are more resourceful than you give them credit for. This weapon is ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Earth, your colonies, All of it gone in an instant unless you surrender. The room erupted into chaos. Human delegates shouted accusations while Iridian guards tensed, hands on weapons. Marcus raised his voice above the din. Enough! As silence fell, he turned to his advisors. Talia's face was grim, while Zach's fingers flew over a datapad, desperately searching for a technological solution. There was none to be found. Marcus's mind raced. They couldn't capitulate, not after everything they'd sacrificed, but the risk of losing everything. He straightened. Decision made. We need to hit them first, find that weapon and destroy it before they can use it. Hours later, Marcus crouched in the shadows of a massive Iridian facility. His elite team spread out behind him. They'd tracked the weapon's energy signature to this heavily fortified complex on a barren moon. Zach, status on the security systems? Marcus whispered into his comm. Almost there. Got it. You've got a 60-second window before the patrols cycle back. Marcus signaled, and they moved. Racing across open ground, they reached an access hatch. Talia covered them as Zach worked to bypass the lock. With a soft hiss, the door slid open. They fought their way through twisting corridors, every step bringing them closer to their target. Alarms blared, and the thud of approaching Iridian troops echoed off metal walls. There! Zach shouted, pointing to a massive blast door. The core is behind that! As they worked to breach the final barrier, a hail of plasma fire erupted from behind. Marcus spun, returning fire, and found himself face-to-face with Vizak and a squad of elite guards. But it was the figure standing at Vizak's side that made Marcus's heart stop. Nolan? He gasped, lowering his weapon in shock. His old friend, the man he'd left for dead in that mine, stood there in Iridian battle armor, a cruel smile twisting his features. Hello, Marcus, Nolan said, raising his own weapon. Surprised to see me? Marcus's mind reeled. But how? Why? Nolan laughed, a hollow sound devoid of warmth. I've been working for the Iridians all along, you fool. Every secret, every plan, I fed it all to them. And now it ends. The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. Every victory, every hard-won gain, had it all been part of some grand Iridian scheme? There was no time to process the betrayal. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as both sides opened fire. Marcus dove for cover, his team scattering. He found himself face-to-face with Nolan, grappling for control of the weapon. They crashed into the control console, alarms shrieking as systems overloaded. Marcus saw the fear in Nolan's eyes as they both realized what was happening. It's going to blow, Zach yelled. We need to go now. Marcus hesitated for a split second, looking at the man who had once been his closest friend. But there was nothing left of that person in Nolan's hate-filled eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus whispered, then turned and ran. They sprinted through disintegrating corridors as the facility tore itself apart around them. A deafening roar built behind them as they reached their ship and blasted off. From orbit, they watched as a blinding flash consumed the moon, taking with it the superweapon and any hope of Iridian victory. Marcus sat heavily in the pilot's seat, the adrenaline fading to leave only a bone-deep weariness. They'd won, but the cost had been far too high.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.